to it. All right, so we had our three breakout questions. What was the thesis of the reading? Why does Malcolm feel more at home in Ghana than he does in the United States? And then finally, why does Malcolm consider Ghana to be the most progressive African nation? Who would like to share what they talked about regarding the thesis of the reading? Go ahead, Sylvie.
Okay. The thesis that okay, my thesis was basically around the theme, and I noticed that what reoccurs in Malcolm's speech is how America has failed its citizens, specifically the 22 million Black majority, and how he continuously states in a variety of ways how he chooses to speak in informal language, insinuating to how enslaved people are brought to America as cargo and not on cruise ships.
Perfect. Yeah, I would have to agree, right? The failures of America to afford 22 million African people some type of citizenship, right? Or some type of justice or some type of inclusion into the society. Absolutely. Who would like to speak to why Malcolm felt more at home in Ghana than he did within the United States? And the second question.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah. So the second question was, why did Malcolm X, and he states this in the reading, right? Why did he feel more at home in Ghana than he did in the United States? Ulysses, do you have an idea as to why Malcolm felt more at home in Ghana than he did in the United States?
Yeah, so I messed up and I did the reading for the Move movement. So I didn't get a chance to read the Malcolm X one. But like if I had to take a guess, honestly, it's just like how one would feel today, like if they lived if like somebody of color lived in an area with white people, like you would feel uncomfortable. You don't feel like yourself. You have to feel like you're always looking over your shoulder, or you're just somebody that always like you can't speak freely, you can't be yourself, you can't show your true personality, and whatever. But so I feel like maybe for him he might have felt uncomfortable, and like, or I mean, he felt comfortable back there, and maybe everybody was a community, and actually like nobody was stabbed each other in the back, or he didn't have to always probably look over his shoulder as much, and that's what I'm assuming.
So it's just like there's a level of comfort being amongst your own, is what I'm hearing from you. All right.
100%, yeah.
Anyone else want to speak to why he felt more comfortable in the United States? I'm sorry, in Ghana opposed to the United States? Or why did he argue that Ghana was the most progressive African nation? Talk about question 2 or 3. Go ahead, Sylvia.
Okay. So I think it's because he thinks that the leaders are more progressive and the presidents are really progressive, and it's just not the same as how America is. Definitely just comparing the government and the different systems when it comes to government.
Perfect. Thank you, Sylvia. It's spot on, right? The leadership is what distinguishes Ghana from not only America, but other African nations, right? And if you know the history of Ghana, it was the first country within Africa to overthrow European or foreign invasion, overthrowing colonialism in 1957, I believe it was. All right, so what I would like to do for my portion of the lecture, provide like a background in a contextualization into who Malcolm X was. I would like to also kind of engage this notion of being finding yourself being familiar or being comfortable abroad, right? And I'll kind of speak to some of my experiences in Ghana, and then we'll jump into this notion around being American, right? Um, and an important aspect of what I would like to do also is tie this material to our previous material. And the way that I'll do so is talking about, Malcolm's parents. So if we think back to a few weeks ago and we talked about the work of Marcus Garvey and the fact that Marcus Garvey was able to produce the largest mass movement of African people within the Americas. And Malcolm X's father was in fact a follower of Marcus Garvey. Earl Little, excuse me, was a Garveyite. He followed the teachings of Marcus Garvey, and due to this fact, Malcolm was pretty middle class. Like early on in his lifestyle, early on in his life, he had a middle class lifestyle, right? And they were able to kind of move around. And eventually they landed in Omaha, Nebraska. And while in Nebraska, actually before they moved to Nebraska, what made them move to Nebraska, the Ku Klux Klan had firebombed their house, right? And because of the Ku Klux Klan terror, they moved to Nebraska. While in Nebraska, his father continued his Garvey teachings, continued to spread the philosophy of Marcus Garvey, but ended up being murdered. Um, they bashed his head in with a hammer and laid him across the train tracks. Now, as I mentioned, he came from somewhat of a middle class background. So his family had the ability to put a life insurance policy on the father before he was murdered, right? But due to anti-Black sentiments, due to racism, whatever you want to call it, the insurance company denied the claim, saying that his father killed himself, right? Saying that he committed suicide, right? That shit, yes. Belvina, yes. Victory, yes. Like what the fuck, right? But like due to your to co-sign your confusion, right? Hit himself in the back of the head and then walks to the train and lays down, because where he was struck in the head was not on the train tracks. There's distance between the two. So how does one hit themselves in the head and then walk a few feet and lay down on the train tracks to be ran over, right? But this is the absurdity of the system that we exist in. So the father was the breadwinner. The father has now been removed from the home. Just like anybody, when you don't have the ability to make ends meet, you have to go get it how you can. So Malcolm and his six or seven siblings, to eat, right? They would steal. Father may brought home the finances. He's gone. So you got to do what you got to do. Because of this activity, the state intervened and took the children out of the home and placed them into foster care. And this, in effect, drove Malcolm's mother insane, and she ends up in the insane asylum. So, father murdered, mother institutionalized. He's and his siblings are in foster care. Now, there's a slew of racial incidents and anti-Black experiences that he had to go through while in foster care. Eventually, he would transition into Boston and live with his sister. But while in Boston, he starts to kind of get into illicit activities, selling weed and shit like that, right? But also while he's in Boston, he gets a job on the trains, and he would travel back and forth along the East Coast on these trains, but he's able to touch down in Harlem. And when he touches down in Harlem, he falls in love, and he decides he's not going back to Boston. And who takes him in Harlem is the underworld, right? Pimps, hustlers, folks selling drugs, right? And so Malcolm himself begins to engage in this activity. They called him Detroit Red at the time, right? But how he did it was so masterful because what he ends up doing, in effect, is being a drug peddler, a reefer, what they called it at the time, or weed seller to all the jazz musicians, right? So if you need some weed, you play jazz, you was in New York, Malcolm X is who you would go to. The likes of Billie Holiday was one of his good friends. I'm not sure, you're probably not familiar with the comedian Red Fox, right? He was one of Malcolm X's friends at the time, right? So Malcolm has kind of established himself as a higher player in the New York social scene. But his illicit activity, in particular, robbing houses, places him in jail. And while in jail, he gets converted into the Nation of Islam. And the Nation of Islam is a Islamic sect that operates within the United States, predominantly for African descended or for Black folks, right? And some of the things that they believe or espouse is the fact that Black folks should live separately from white folks, right? So we should be able to carve out 7 to 8 states within the nation and make them Black states without white interference, right? This is one of the belief systems of the Nation of Islam. Malcolm comes to prominence very quickly within the Nation of Islam and becomes the minister of Temple Number 7 in Harlem, one of the premier spokesmen for the Nation of Islam. Because of his prominence and his popularity, he has a lot of negative attention from the Nation of Islam and ends up falling out. When he has his falling out, he establishes his own organization, Muslim Mosque Incorporated, and the Organization for Afro-American Unity. While he's falling out with the Nation of Islam, he has the opportunity to make his Hajj, his pilgrimage back to Mecca, and also visit Africa. Sylvia, go ahead.
When you say Nation of Islam, you're talking about the religion, right? Like you can use those words interchangeably.
No, it is vastly different. So this is a religious sect that operates strictly within the United States. In fact, one of the things that happens when Malcolm goes to Mecca as part of his Hajj, he realizes how different the Nation of Islam is compared to Orthodox Islam. So they're two totally different things. So for example, the Nation of Islam has its belief system that white folks are the devil, right? Like they're not a devil or devilish, but the actual devil. This is what the Nation of Islam believes, right? Vastly different from what Islam believes, right? There's no philosophy of that within the actual Orthodox Islam. So while traveling abroad, he gets to see that some of the ways that he was trained within the Nation of Islam don't coincide with actual Orthodox Islamic practices. But his travels abroad bring him to the moment where he's able to go to Ghana and deliver this speech that you all read, or that some of you read. But why I bring up all of this history on Malcolm is to kind of help you understand and help you situate. Yeah, do you think you help you understand and help you situate why Malcolm is the way that he is? Now, we've been learning for weeks now about the ills of America, so I hope you all understand that. But what I think is important is for Malcolm's personal experiences to be understood. I mean, think about this. His father's murdered, mother's institutionalized. He gets incarcerated, right? So when he talks about being a victim of America, he's speaking from firsthand experience. Yes, he's speaking in hyperbole in the standpoint of where all Black folks' experiences are, but he's also pulling from very firsthand experiences. He says quite famously in his autobiography, if a family has ever been destroyed by the state, mine has. And again, to reiterate, right, think about it. Pops is dead, murdered, mind you, not just heart attack, but murdered. They had the wherewithal to take out an insurance policy on him just in case something happens, they won't be stuck. Denied that insurance policy. So because of that, they have to turn to criminality to eat and survive. Because of that, the mom is sorry, they're pulled from their mother and she's institutionalized, right? So when he talks about a state destroying his family, this is what he means. His experiences inform that. Now, Malcolm comes from Harlem, right? And the Harlem of Malcolm's time is a very, very Black space. Black culture, Black performance, Black dress, Black conversation is very Black. But it's vastly different from getting on a plane, flying across the Atlantic, and landing in Ghana. Yes, Harlem is Black, but Ghana is a different type of Black because in Ghana, Black folks aren't only there, but they're in power. It's a very profound experience to get off of a plane and look and see nothing but Black people running the airport, right? Touring the airport, right? Sylvia, go ahead.
It's actually so interesting that you're saying this because I think I was having a conversation with my boyfriend and he was just looking at like my country like videos and stuff, and he was like, there's really like Black people on ads, like there's Black people like everywhere, security guards, like over here you go to like the Russians to fix your cars, the Mexicans to, you know, to eat food. And I'm like, yeah, it's an everyday thing. So that was really surprising to just hear his perspective on that as well.
But Sylvia, it's not normal for us. You know what I'm saying? It's like especially out here in Southern California, it would be one thing if we was like in DC, if we was in Atlanta, you know what I'm saying? Like it would be a different experience. But going to Africa, and I'm speaking like from my firsthand experience, right? Like I was blown away. Like I've never seen anything like that, you know? And then like as I kind of come to the realization, as I kind of like come out of the moment of being blown away by all these Black folks, the next thing I recognize is the police. And you know, coming from America, we have a certain relationship with the police. And in Africa, they didn't have like the little lock that we be having out here. They have like, you know, machine guns, AK-47s. You know what I mean? They don't have that little ass baton that we have out here. They have like a really long ass big baton like that drags on the floor. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm peeping all this and I'm seeing them make like a beeline straight to me. So shit, I'm checking my pockets and making sure that my shit is clean. You know what I mean? Because I'm from America. Like it's just what you are trained to do. But as they approached me, what's up, brother? Welcome home. Pounded me up and went about their business. It's a profoundly different experience interacting with the police, right? The police. Welcome home, brother. And as I continue to move through Ghana, that was consistent. That was consistent. Welcome home. Our long lost child has returned. In fact, a whole ceremony to welcome us back. This idea of going out of the door of no return. There's a castle on Cape Coast where they have what's called the door of no return. And the idea is once enslaved Africans go out of that door, they won't make it back home. So for the Ghanaians, how they process our return, these are the children that made it back. So when you talk about being welcomed, when you talk about feeling more at home in Ghana than you do in the United States, I can say from firsthand experience, I understand what he means. It's like having 500 pounds lifted off of your shoulders, the lightness that you feel of being able to move through space and not be viewed as suspicious, not be suspected as criminal. Just go about your own business without someone trying to be in your business just because you Black. It's something that everyone who occupies a Black body should experience once. And if it's not Africa, maybe it's Jamaica, you know, maybe it's somewhere in the Caribbean, but you should at least visit an all Black space so you know what it feels like. It feels different. But I can tell you this, being on African soil, like being on the homeland, like can't really articulate in words what that feels like. Just even to be on ground, like put your feet on the soil, feels different. The climate, the smells, home. And it genuinely feels like that. But what's profound about Ghana is the people have it ingrained in them to understand the fact that folks that are outside of the diaspora belong here too. They were one of the first countries to provide you dual citizenship. So you could be an American citizen and also occupy Ghanaian citizenship. Go ahead, Sylvia.
When you said the word ingrained, it kind of sparked a question that I had I wanted to ask. And the reading was talking about a colonial mentality. Is that what you're touching on? Could you just expand on that and what he meant on that too?
Okay, so when I'm saying ingrained, what's been ingrained in the Ghanaian people is like this notion of Pan-Africanism, this notion that no matter where you're located, you're a part of us, you're one of us. That's what I mean when I'm saying being ingrained. Because again, with their president, Kwame Nkrumah, when he liberated the country in the late 50s, part of their liberation process was to liberate all of Africa. So if you think about the Ghanaian flag, it's red, gold, and green with a black star in the middle of it, right? So the idea was, and this is what he says on the day that they liberate the country for the speech, right? Ghana is raising the first black star. But if what he would like to see happen is, excuse me, the United States of Africa, right? So the 54 countries within Africa all operate as one nation, right? So eventually that that flag would have 54 stars to represent all of the countries being free. And he says Ghana's independence means nothing if all of Africa isn't free. So this is what I'm saying when I mean like it's been ingrained into their personality, into their psyche by the actions of their president. W.E.B. Du Bois, right, on his deathbed, he was in Ghana working for Nkrumah, producing the Encyclopedia Africana. Um, Maya Angelou famously talks about how her time in Ghana working under Nkrumah's tutelage was some of the best times that she had in her life. So what he did is he invited folks from the diaspora to come and help build the country. So when I mean like this ingrained, this is what I mean, like this ingrained notion of being a Pan-Africanist. What Malcolm is talking about is how Black folks here have been ingrained with this notion of colonialism, right? We have been trained to view Africa in a negative light. We have been ingrained and been trained to view Africa as being poor, as being impoverished, right? This notion of the third world. This is what Malcolm is referring to when he's talking about what's being ingrained into the Black psyche. Vastly different from what's being ingrained into the Ghanaians. Does that answer your question, Sylvia?
Yeah, it does perfectly. Thank you.
Perfect. All right, so I'm gonna put my speech on pause. We'll jump into our fishbowl. We have 2 per semester. You can pass one time. I'll ask for volunteers, and if not, I'll start calling on people at random. Does anyone want to volunteer to fishbowl?
I can go.
Okay, Sylvia, anyone else? And if not, I'll start volunteering. All right. Russell, are you prepared to fishbowl?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Pablo, are you prepared? Are you prepared to fishbowl?
I think
You're breaking up, Pablo. I'm sorry. Try that one more time. Are you prepared to fishbowl? Yeah, you're cutting out. Okay. Um, Jose, are you prepared to fishbowl?
No, can I use my skip?
Yeah. Ulysses, are you prepared to fishbowl?
No, I can't fishbowl because I didn't do the reading, or I did the wrong one.
Okay. You could talk about something you heard in the lecture. You could talk about what's discussed in your breakout room too. It doesn't have to necessarily work through the reading.
Okay, like I could do that. Like I could talk about like what I thought was interesting about it.
Yes.
Okay, that's cool then.
Give me 1 second then. So we'll go Sylvia, Russell, and then Ulysses to close us out. It's on you, sis.
Okay, so definitely just my takeaway with the reading and everything we discussed is just noticing how the American land has failed its citizens, specifically the Black majority, and just understanding how, like in Malcolm's speech, how he attributes a lot of the people's mentality through their leaders and understanding the importance of leaders because they have the authority to control what people think and they necessarily really try to make the African part of them something valuable. And just this whole experience for me just makes me appreciate just where I'm from a little bit more because growing up, it's like I actually hated that was just surrounded by only Black people. So I really, I love hearing perspectives and just learning from this experience too. Yeah.
Thank you, Sylvia. Russell, it's on you.
Something that really caught my eye during the reading was how Malcolm X went on talking about how Ghana is one of the most progressive progressive places and how the president betters the image of Ghana.
And Ulysses.
Honestly, I really liked how when we were talking about how Malcolm X like felt more comfortable in Ghana because like for me, for example, like going to an all white school and not being able to like um be, not, I mean, I wouldn't say normal, but I mean, I guess the word would be normal, or like I wouldn't be able to show my personality, or be myself, or like certain slang that I say sometimes. It's like, people would think that's weird or whatever, but like, being around other people of culture, it's like it's normal and it's not weird, but like being at that other school, that's how it was and stuff. So honestly, I just feel like that was just, I think that was really interesting how he was able to just be there and feel welcomed by his own people. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I think that's a great analysis, right? It's like going to a PWI, a private white institution, juxtaposed to going to an HBCU, right? There's just going to be a level of familiarity. It's going to be a level of comfort that you're just going to have, and I think that's a great assessment. One of the things I do want to talk about, and I think I would be remiss if I left this aspect of Malcolm's life out, right? One of the things that he really wanted to do before he was assassinated was take the United States before the United Nations for crimes against the humanity of Black folks, right? So to think about it this way, um, when the war in Ukraine started, right? And everyone started showing support for the Ukrainians because Russia was violating their human rights. For Malcolm, he's saying this is the same principle, right? The United States have been violating the human rights of Black folks since they've been brought here. So it makes no sense for us to continue to go to the United States courts to seek justice for the crimes that the United States is perpetrating. So what we should do is go to a higher power and a higher authority, and that higher power and authority at the time was the United Nations, right? So this is what his desire was before he was assassinated. Now, I want you to think about this. Not the movement, not the organization, but the term, right? The slogan, the call, Black Lives Matter. What does that mean? What does that statement mean? Black Lives Matter. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, simply put, it just means that like Black people, like they matter too. I feel like a lot of people kind of confuse it and think that they're not talking about other people mattering as well, but it's supposed to mean Black people matter too. You know, it's almost like it has like two at the end, but it's not a part of it. It's just, cut down to a shorter slogan.
So if we exist in a society where we have to make the proclamation that Black Lives Matter, right? Then implicitly, what does that say about the state of Black life in that society? Go ahead, Kyle.
That it's not valued at all.
Perfect. So if we are still existing in a society where Black life does not matter, then we have to understand that our human rights still aren't being honored and addressed. Let me ask you this. Give me an example of civil rights. Give me an example of civil rights. So when you think about the civil rights movement, what were some of the things that they protested and advocated for? What were some of the accomplishments of the civil rights movement? Go ahead, Sylvie.
I'm not 100% sure, like 62% sure, but I think it was a fight for justice and equality for Black Americans, and I think that's where they were able to the whole thing. They were able to stop the whole like Black people restrooms only and stuff like that. Black people schools only, white people schools only. They're able
Segregation.
to stop segregation, right?
Okay, so one of the components of civil rights is the ability and the freedom to go to school where you want, right? To eat where you want, right? These are civil rights. The ability to vote is a civil right. So the rights that are granted to you as a citizen operate and occupy are civil rights. But here's the cold part. No one will honor or respect your civil rights if they don't honor and respect your human rights. What good is it to vote if they don't even consider you an actual human being? What good is it to go to school with someone if you're not even considered having the human capacity to be educated? So what I'm trying to get us to understand is the fatal misstep of trying to secure civil rights without not first having your human rights. It's pointless. Do you care where, well, shit, the cold part about it, this is the fucked up part. What I was gonna say, do you care where a dog goes to eat? But we do, in this society, we care more about a dog's rights than we do Black folks. Sad but true. Think about the lengths these white folks will go for their dog. I'm saying, let's be real about it, right? They won't do that for a Black child, a Black mother, a Black father. They don't get the same type of compassion. Because we're not viewed as human. So I'm arguing until we get that mapped out, until we can secure that reality, situation won't be changing.
How do you think that would be possible?
I think first and foremost, Sylvia, I think collectively as people, we have to understand our human value. No one's gonna respect you as a human if you don't respect yourself as a human. You don't love yourself enough to hold yourself in a certain type of dignified regard, right? I do rites of passage, and one of the chants that we do for rites of passage, it starts off with self-love is the prerequisite for being fully human. Self-love is the prerequisite for being fully human, right? So to be really human, you must love yourself. So for me, I think that has to be step one, like a collective, global um, love for Blackness, and not just like the uppity middle class bourgeoisie Blackness, but for all forms of Blackness, right? Black folks in the hood, Black folks that, you know what I mean? Like all forms of Blackness. And once we begin to love each other at that capacity, then hopefully we begin to treat ourselves and each other differently, right? And through that example, it will not allow us to stand for anyone else to treat us less than what we know we deserve to be treated. And I know it sounds maybe kind of abstract and also esoteric, but I do believe that's the first step for us securing some type of human rights and human justice. Other thoughts, other questions, other comments, other concerns?
You just reminded me, I don't know if you've seen, like, there's this clip that went viral, and it's basically like about how there's like a line of women and they have to pop a balloon, like when a man comes across. And there's this specific man who came, and this woman popped the balloon immediately. That basically was signifying how she didn't want him. And they have an opportunity to explain like why you didn't want this man. And she was just basically saying they were both black, and she was basically like from Chicago, and she was basically saying how I don't want you because you're wearing a hat, you look raggedy, like why are you wearing a hat, why are you wearing that briefcase, why do you talk like that? And then I think the way this guy handled that situation really exemplified the self-love that you're talking about. Like, even though he was, I'll find the clip, like I think it's really really like good, but just how he was able to respect her, but also say like, look, I'm like this because the struggles I've been through makes me who I am. I speak like this because I'm from the hood, and this is just who I am. But yeah, I think that was just a great example exemplifying what you said.
Yeah, and I think also it kind of speaks to the lack of self-love, right? Because if you couldn't just see him for who he is outside of what he's wearing, then really to a certain degree, you don't even love yourself, right? Go ahead, Belvina.
I also feel like it's very majorly a part that I know a lot of Black people think that it's showing hatred towards Black people by not dating someone who's Black. But I feel like my personal understanding has come to be that you can date someone who's Black without talking bad about someone who's Black. For instance, like I'm a perfect example. Like as I've said before, I'm with a guy who's Mexican, but I'm not going to go around saying Black men are this, Black men are that, Black men this, that, and the third, because it just doesn't make sense. And, you know, you can't just base an experience with one race off of a couple bad encounters. And I feel like sometimes people do that a lot with Black people.
I agree. And to me, to your point, that's when I kind of like put up my eyebrow for the person who is in the interracial relationship. Once I start hearing you talking badly about all Black women or all Black men, at that point, I know that you're operating from a space of self-hate, regardless of what you try to say or how much you want to justify your love. The love that you have for that individual shouldn't predicate on the disdain you have for Black women. They're not mutual. It should be, exclusive, right? But for me, this is when I know these individuals aren't practicing the type of self-love um, that is required to be fully human, right? But I do want to offer you this, Belvin, just to kind of complicate your thought process. And I don't know where y'all at in your relationship, and it really doesn't matter. But thinking future tense, right? For me, one of the things that's profoundly important about being pro-Black, so to say, or having love for Black people is the capacity to create Black people. You have to love yourself enough to recreate yourself. So that's the one way that I would complicate this notion of mixed relationships. Because also what you often have, what you find when it comes to reproduction, right? You have these comments like, "Oh, I'm gonna get me a white boy because my baby could have good hair," and things of that nature, right? So these are other ways that this self hate seeks to reproduce itself. Love yourself enough to make sure your baby had that kinky hair like you got it, right? These are other ways of manifesting and displaying that self-love. Kyle Williams, what you thinking?
I think it's very interesting, and I like the dynamic of the conversation so far, and especially with self-love and self-hate, and how it ties into us being fully human and taking our human rights, because it all comes down to that, in the sense that um like, people are not going to respect you if you don't show, like, if they see that you don't respect yourself. And like, moving, and when um people are, like, out in the streets protesting, I notice a lot of times people who, like, have counter arguments, or in a sense, they'll be like, well, like, you want like, like, be from the police or something abstract like that, um for to progress and progress. But at the same time, they're like, well, what about people who shoot, like, black people in gangs who are shooting other people, and in that sense, they see self-hate, and so they perpetuate hate on that group.
Yeah, this is true. This is a very good point, right? And you heard a lot of this, and this is what you're bringing up, right? Like during, for example, Black Lives Matter protests, it's like, well, how are you going to advocate for Black life if you're here killing Black life, right? And what I'm hearing from you, Kai, is like, if we were to love ourselves enough to where murdering a Black life is unacceptable, it's going to be a lot harder for them to justify the continual murder of our life, right? And I think that's a very good point. Sylvia, how long is the video? Like a couple minutes? Because I know it's TikTok, so
Less than a minute.
let me see if I can pull it up. And that we can watch that. And we'll close out with that. Because I don't have a TikTok. But I think I got. Hold on, give me 1 second.
As you're doing that, I was talking like with this like my group in the beginning and also other groups about the possibility of having this class in person, like maybe even like 2 classes in person. Yeah.
We'll see. We will tease that out. Maybe like to close out the quarter. We'll see what we could do. Ulysses, you had a question or statement?
Yeah, what's it called? Before we close out, whatever, I just was wondering, so what's the reading for next class? Because I don't want to get mistaken.
Yeah, I'll clarify that.
Okay.
Yeah, let's watch this and then we'll close out with what you're asking, okay?
All right, for sure.
Hold on. Can y'all see this?
Okay. Which you don't have. On your, just want a man with a higher vocabulary, okay, which you don't have. On your day-to-day speak.
Why you pop yours? You ain't fucking with me?
Oh, hold on. Let me go ahead. Go on back. I'm 26.
Okay.
And you talk like my little brother. I feel like I'm talking to my little Chicago as well.
Oh.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah, you're very gorgeous though, but I don't like that you put the fake flower in your vest trying to make it look better than what it was.
Yeah.
I don't like that you brought a fake briefcase. There's probably nothing in there, and it's also halfway open. You should probably close it. Also, I don't like that the fact that you put your hat.
What would be
Why do you have
considered
a hat
a
on?
fake briefcase though?
Fake briefcase.
I mean, the hair
or
done.
something.
It's done. It's
Why
done.
don't you show your hair?
That's what I wanted to do today.
I understand. I just want to see your hair though.
I get it. You feel me? I've dealt with, you feel me, Chicago women most of my life. You okay? You feel me? Me and your brother probably sound alike because we done been through the same struggles. You feel me? But I could respect that. I just wanted to know what you was thinking about. That's all that was.
It's just weird talking to my little brother. So
no problem. You can't say little. We the same age, darling. Let's be respectful.
you sound like him though.
That's
So
because we from
talking-
the same place. So you don't like
No,
you don't
it's
like
not.
people from your hometown.
I never said
And
that.
that's respectful. I can respect
I
that.
just want a man with a higher vocabulary,
Okay.
which you don't have. On your day-to-day speak. Speaking to all the other women, trust. I know. You're good.
I talk like where I was born from. I got a real like respect. I can't let you, like, you feel me, throw down what I've been through. You feel me?
I understand what you went
I'm
through.
just saying though, you tried though, darling.
No, I
You feel me?
didn't.
So I want you to know, like, I'm really from struggle. I speak a
great.
certain type of way, but I've searched for education. I have a bachelor's
That's
degree.
fine.
You feel me? What I do right now, I work with people every day. So I don't want you to just throw shade on hood in general,
usually throwing shade
because I
on you,
speak
huh?
with a little slang. I got a little hood to me, but I'm educated, baby.
No, that's fine.
We can move forward. Thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead and go to our
Definitely.
3 ladies that still have their balloon unpopped.
Definitely. Tough.
Yeah, it was that's so triggering in like so many different ways. And I have to say, to be honest, right, there was some colorism tied up in that assessment as well, at least from my vantage point, right? And you're absolutely right, Sylvia, in the sense of what I'm speaking about when I mean like that self-love. And that self-love, regardless of class, right? Regardless of diction, what comes out of your mouth, right? I mean, this is why I talk the way I do with the PhD. Right? Like, what the fuck you saying? You know what I mean? But yeah, I think that's a great example of a failure to love Blackness in all of its complexities and all of its capacities. And once we get beyond that, then we can have a real conversation about how do we begin to get our human rights respected. For next week, I'm going to determine whether we'll jump into our midterm prep or if we will cover like some more material. Initially, I had thought we would go to spring break, come back and get you all ready for your midterms, but it looks like we have a little bit more time. Let me see. Because the spring break is on the 1st. Yeah. What we'll probably do is the last week of this month go over our spring break. So on Monday, excuse me, before Monday, by Saturday, I'll post the material for Monday. And then I'll make an announcement saying what that material is, and it will be in the Canvas. It may be readings, it may be videos, I'm not sure, but I'll look and see what we'll cover. And then that following week, we'll start prepping for our midterms. And then what we'll do is we'll do our midterms, and then y'all just enjoy your break. And you don't have to worry about nothing for the break. You know what I mean? That'll be done for. Go ahead, Ulysses.
I just want to clarify for the midterm, we're just submitting our journal entries, right?
No, you're gonna have actual midterm. So you'll submit you'll submit your journal entries, but you'll have a essay-driven midterm. So you'll be like 5 essay questions, and then you'll choose 3 of those 5 questions to submit. You'll have a few days to do it. So what will probably happen is, let's just say, so I'll give you some dates. The midterm will be available to like start on Thursday, the 28th, let's just say, for example, and I'll ask you to submit that by Monday, the 1st of April, right? So you have a couple of days to do it. Again, 5 questions, but you're only asked to answer 3 of the 5 questions, and then we'll spend a whole week like getting you all prepared for those midterm questions, so that way you'll know what to get into. That sound good? All right. Any other last minute questions, comments, or concerns?